Do I have to? How about now? Any luck? Yay, nay?
Oh, I heard someone.
Oh my god. It's happening. We're living in the future. How's that, Randy?
God, that was a great moment those few seconds ago.
All right, here I can move the mic a little closer too. I just had a little further away because last time it picked up all of my typing, which is real fun. Okay, I think this might be mostly everyone that's interested in Firebase. So, but apparently London has some interest because I think that's everyone that's currently watching the live stream. Oh man, I had 6 people connected, and then it's 5. Oh, I guess it was you when you connected. Damn it.
Well, we can just pump up these numbers.
Does everyone connect? Yeah, so, okay, so, well, for us to get started, yeah, so last time we did a chat app in HyperScript, and I happen to use Firebase, so I'm just going to step you guys through what that looks like. And then I have a new app that we'll switch to, and we'll try and get Firestore working. So this one is using the old Firebase DB, and I believe we had a request from Jesse Carter to give Firestore a shot, so we'll see. Cool, can you guys read that fine?
I'm getting some lights down a little bit.
Yeah, let's do that, and actually I'll T-Max this as well, because we're going to want to jump on a server. Ignore that code for now. Actually, what do we want to do? Oh, right, we want 3. Attila, were you here last week for Tech Talk?
Thursday, I think, or something.
Okay. Yeah, I couldn't remember if you were here for that. Okay, so yeah, last week we went through a few apps aside from this, which is a completely different thing. And apparently I don't know how to vim. Yeah, cool. So we went through a few apps. So we did a simple list app, which was just a list that we could add things to. It was kind of like an intro to Hyper app, and then tic-tac-toe, and then a chat app. So the chat app we backed on to Firebase. And yeah, so this is typically what like a Firebase import looks like. Some people actually do like a stars Firebase from Firebase. I just hate globbing things, so I just kind of pull out the pieces that I need. So we can grab an app, and then from that app we can access the database and auth, which is nice and easy. Yeah, and then we initialize an app. So when you create an app, you get an API key, auth domain, database URL, project ID, and all these things are scoped to either localhost or Firebase's default hosting domain, which will be like your Firebase app dash, then a unique ID. Oh, actually here it's plain. Yeah, I thought it appended like a UUID to there, but I guess not. Hey, yeah, that's cool, man.
Start on everything.
Yes.
That concludes today's talk.
And that's everything you read.
Yep. So, yeah, anyway, so Firebase, initially the security rules are scoped to localhost or the Firebase domain. So that's why these things are like perfectly okay for me to have in the wild. Like if someone wants to, I don't know, load this up on their own local host and try and mess up my stuff. I also have Firebase database rules, which limit how the data can be accessed and whatever else. So I don't know. It's not too bad. We'll get to the rules shortly though, because I have a suspicion that the Firebase store is a completely different beast in terms of rules. So I don't know if we'll get to that. I have no experience using Firebase Data Store as a precursor to this, so I don't know how this is going to go. But for regular Firebase, it's not too bad. So Firebase has an auth module, which you can like sign in through various OAuth means or anonymously. So anonymous is like really great for like testing, but you can also have it so they sign with GitHub or whatever, and most of that flow is automated. So on the Firebase dashboard, you can update stuff too for that. But yeah, we'll get into that. We'll actually build like a brand new Firebase app live and do all that fun stuff. Yeah, so after we sign in, so Firebase is almost completely promise-based. So you can do a lot of interesting chains. So in this case, after we sign in, then we create our user and type it's anonymous and whatever name we gave it. Yeah, and log out isn't too bad either, so you can just call sign out, and that removes the internal auth tokens. So Firebase itself is like a singleton that's hidden behind layers of magic, and it manages all this like auth state. And on top of these login, log out, I also have on auth state changed. So once we authenticate or de-authenticate, we'll either get a user or a null. And this is kind of like the secret power-up of their auth system that you can reactively deal with auth without having like a bunch of handlers based on sign in and sign out. Yeah, there's other stuff too. So Firebase is, from a very simplistic standpoint, just a big JSON document. So when we access things, we can basically access it by specifying like a chain of keys. So for instance, the first reference that we give in a database has to be .ref, and everything else can be .child. .ref could be empty, so I could do a ref.child users here. And this is the same. So ref is just saying that we're making a reference to the database, and then the parameter is just a short form of adding in that child immediately.
Could you add more than one argument to ref?
You could, but I don't think it does anything with anything else.
Okay.
But if you're saying like, could you do like a bigger thing? I think you can do something like user/1, and you can give like basically a full path name with slash separators, and it would do exactly the same thing. In this case, we would actually have to like append in whatever this junk is. Yeah. So that's how that works. Yeah, then set auth, so we get a new user in, and depending on whether or not we have the user, we'll find that user in the users list and use that data, or null, so we can null out the current user. Adding messages is pretty easy too. So, oh, this is not the same add message. So this is actually appending a message in, but sending a message, which is the guy I was thinking about here. So originally I thought that I would have to merge in some extra data, but I kind of refactored it so we have lots of magic-y things here. And then add message takes care of the rest. So add message will be called once we actually send our message, and then we translate it into like a useful message for our app. Yeah, so push is one way of appending data. So Firebase doesn't really have a concept of arrays. So you can actually give it an array and it'll use like numeric keys. But that's not really how it wants to work. So what it really wants is you to use push, which pushes in a new key to the parent object. And all the keys are guaranteed to be ordered based on the time that they're inserted. So yeah, what this guy's really doing is, so we got like our messages, and then we've got like key, and then whatever the actual message is. That's what it's doing behind the scenes. And you can do some interesting things with push. So you can actually push an empty message, and that will actually return a reference, and you can use that reference to use that ordered key later.
Right.
So the equivalent would be, you have something like...
And we can push again?
Nope. So we do a set. So now we have a reference to this, but this isn't actually in the database. And we do ref.set message. So set is another thing. So if you're either not using like a collection of items, or you know exactly where you're setting the data, then you use a set. Doing a set null is equivalent to doing a ref remove. So if message was null, it just removes it from the collection. So lots of stuff. I'm presuming this works. Like I see Attila's got everything open and things are just reloading properly. So that gives me some good feels. Cool. So like, I don't know. I'm like doing a super vague overview of Firebase because I'm not super prepared. But like, are there any questions on so far what we're seeing? Okay.
Probably something I missed by not being here at the beginning. What's the initial setup look like? Like, do you just ask for like a Firebase instance and start using it, or do you have to like define a schema and all that kind of typical?
So with Firebase, you can give it like a schema. So that kind of goes back to the Firebase rules.
Mm-hmm.
And this,
oh right, I need this.
But by default, all it does is set read and write to having to be authed. So essentially, as long as you're authed, you could write anything you want. But as soon as you start imposing some rules, then it gets more specific about how you can do things, and then it gives you live errors as you're using Firebase. If you're
and you go to their website just to like create the thing and get the key and all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
Or are there other like UI things?
yeah, so there's lots of neat things that we can do. Here, I'll just pop this over here. So this is a fresh one. Well, I guess I can use my personal one. We're not going to click on anything too exciting. Yeah, so this is the chat app. So the database, you get like kind of a live feed of messages. These are what the keys look like, by the way. So they always start with a dash, and then the rest of it is like ordered. So I think it's like a hashed timestamp of some sort, maybe with some other data involved. And then, yeah, we also have a collection of users here too. Yeah. So that's how that looks. You can do like the rules live over here too, as well as do some tests to make sure that like whether or not you're off, can you read or write to certain locations. I think you can do, backups are like a paid feature, but there's nothing stopping you from writing something that literally just reads your entire database and dumps it to whatever.
Yeah.
But this is obviously a much nicer solution because it's automated, and I believe it does it on regular intervals. You could also write a Firebase function that probably waits for something to be added, and then grabs the whole thing, then dumps it in like Firebase storage, which may or may not be as efficient as this.
What do more complex queries look like? For instance, like all messages by user.
So if you want to do a query where you're looking for messages with user ID, so there's basically a rule that you can only query one thing at a time with Firebase database. Firestore is different. You can do more complicated queries. But here, for instance, I could say, I want all of the messages, or I could say all the messages with, and then like one thing about the message, so I could, query the user ID.
Okay, so therefore, you would need to kind of modify the broad query yourself, like in your app.
Yeah, so if you want to do more complicated things, so there was a solution for a library called GeoFire, I believe, that did like geolocation database information. And what they did is had composite keys, so when you had when you added a latitude or longitude, it would also add something I think was just lat long, and it would be the combined of two of those. So then you could do a query based on two pieces of information. And then they'd be combined in such a way that every time you did the query, you could basically build like lat comma long, and it would know. So you can get away with like hacks like that. Firebase Store is Firestore, I guess is what it's called. As far as I know, you can query on multiple things.
What kind of, do you know anything about scaling for this? Like, what if I decide to make an app with Firebase and it actually gets like significant uptake?
Yeah, so like they have different plans.
Yeah.
So the free version, you can get still quite a bit of throughput on.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't have the pricing stuff memorized, but you guys at your own leisure can go into Firebase.
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering more like, is it automatic? You have to,
I think you get a message through like email saying like, hey man, like your app, you're like hitting a limit or getting close to a limit, and maybe think about upgrading.
Yeah.
They do have a plan that's like a pay as you go, so it's just like basically the free tier, and then the usage above is like
yeah, like if they auto scale, that's cool. Like if I was gonna like host my own databases on like DigitalOcean or something like that, and I had a huge spike, it's like kind of a pain in the ass to handle it.
Cool. Yeah, and there's other stuff too. So there's authentication, so you could find basically all your users and like disable them or do various things. If, for instance, someone was like jumping on and just like spamming and like eating up all your usage, then you could disable an account or whatever. And then on a per app basis, you can like enable anonymous or any of these defaults. The phone one I haven't played with yet, but I'm the most interested in using that just because I think it just texts you a code and then put it in and then you're good to go, and you don't really have to worry about
They have, if I remember, because I was looking at doing this for my leaderboard and ended up not. They have a nice Unity toolkit.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, Firebase has a bunch of neat helpers. Well, I think like even just going into the docs, like Unity is one of the first class ones. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, and then let's see, we got like some stuff going on here. So just so we can prove that everything works. So if I went on as Alex and log in, cool. So they generated its own little avatar for me. Oh, and apparently Randy has jumped on at some point. I can't read the the timestamp, but recently. Cool. And I broke auto scroll a few days ago when I was playing with this, but this did at one point auto scroll as you go. And all these things are mostly randomly generated, so like the avatar just on load, I generate one based on their unique ID that Firebase gives me, and then obviously their name stays, timestamp, colors are all random, and then your messages are on the right, everyone else's are on the left. But that's how the chat app works generally. Was there any more questions about this before we get into the list stuff? Okay, because we're diving back into some more hyper app stuff because I don't know, I can do it pretty quickly. I think a little faster than React. So let's boot that up, and I'll take you through what I have, and we're going to attempt to integrate the Firestore stuff into it. We'll see how that goes. Cool. So 8080 on my machine should have updated to the new app. So this is all dummy code right now, but so basically from last week, whenever it was that I did mine, I think it was just last week. I don't know. It's more than a day away. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So we had a list app where you could write a list and just add some extra junk at the bottom, and you can just infinitely do that. So I thought it'd be neat if we made lists in Firebase, and then anyone can click on a list, add stuff to that list, create a new list, so on and so forth. We'll see how that goes. Yeah, so I'll step you through the code. It's mostly a shell with a bunch of console logs saying, hey, there's some to-dos. Yeah, so this is broken out a little more. So initially, the first app was just all self-contained in one file. That's not what we want right now. But now we got a bunch of stuff in here. So I'll break it out as best as I can for you. Okay, so this will be familiar, just HyperApp. If you're mounting an app, you need app. And if you're using JSX, or in general, just writing any components, you need H. This is new, so there's a router for HyperApp, which looks surprisingly and suspiciously similar to React Router 4 or 5. I think there's 5 now. I don't know, one of those numbers. These are new, so we've got like maybe kind of like some monolithic pages that also have initial states and actions. So last week we saw that every app has state, actions, and view. So for this view, I just have as a default export, and then we have initial states and actions. So I was just exporting them as kind of initial state, and then just through the magic of ES6, we're just renaming them so they're separate. We've got a loading thing. We can dive into that later. All I have is initialize app so far for Firebase, and config is loading up app.json, which is currently an empty object. Yeah, so we got some states. So last time we had just all of our state jammed into the root, but now we're getting into some fancier stuff where now it's nested inside objects. So we have our state for our index page in index and list page in list. And we also want to maybe store a Firebase instance. You could technically do this outside of the app, but then it becomes more of a side effect, which Firebase technically already is anyway. But this way, it's like we're basically self-containing everything that the app needs in the app itself, which in terms of like functional and like HyperApp, that's probably the right thing to do. Yeah, so we got some other stuff here. So actions, also notice that we're nested. So actions do some funky stuff when you're nested. So in this case, because we're nested inside index, it knows that any action we call is going to resolve to our state that's also nested in index. So it's kind of a nice way to build out like big SPA pages and not have like a bunch of code saying the state is for this page. We've also got some connect stuff, so it looks like we're maybe initializing Firebase, but that's all we're doing, and our config's empty, so this is technically not a real Firebase instance. Yeah, so we got like our view here. So on load, when we initially create our root of the app, we connect, which does our Firebase initialize stuff here. We've got a loading thing. So all loading does is if we pass prop loading as true, then it shows us this. Otherwise, it renders whatever stuff we put inside of it. So in this case, our entire app. So we wait for Firebase to actually have an instance, and then render the app. Here's our routing code. So yeah, if you're familiar with React Router, very similar. We've got a switch that says find the first route inside the switch that matches our path. So in this case, we have our index that renders at the root, and when we have an ID passed in, we can load up the list. And index looks like this. So we've got a set of lists and a flag whether or not we're loading stuff. We've got subscribe and unsubscribe. So this is going to be how we start subscribing to Firebase changes, and then when we unload the view, we can unsubscribe it. And set list is once we actually ask Firebase for information, we can use this to actually populate our state. And our view, yeah, so this is going to be a common pattern that I at least use. I don't know if I'm sold on subscribe and unsubscribe as the words, but basically that would probably be better as create and destroy, so it maps to the life cycle a little better. But when we load up something and we want to use Firebase and we unload and we want to stop using Firebase, you'll probably want something like this on the root of the component that's doing that. Yeah, so build an unordered list, and another thing you'll notice that's familiar to React router people is we have a link, and that goes to a route path, which in this case is just slash whatever the ID is, and then also listing what that ID is so you know what you're clicking on generally. Yeah, and list is set up pretty similarly. So our list is going to have an ID and a set of items, whether or not we're loading something, and then the text for the new item that we want to inject in the list. And we've got subscribe and unsubscribe. For the time being, for this and index, I just have a set timeout to simulate loading, which we can easily swap out to Firebase stuff. Yeah, by default, we set up whatever ID we're loading in, and then reset our items list and say that we're loading. And when we set the items, then we know we're done loading, and we can set those properly. So far, is everything making sense? I'm not like going too over the top. I mean, we haven't dove into the Firebase stuff as much yet, but
yeah, I mean, like, so you have you have a div with some on events, and all they do is serve the purpose of running those actions, and the actions are doing presumably the ascend stuff, and when those are completed, then the rest of the shit happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little confused about why you've chosen or you need to tie those to a rendered element versus
yeah. So
can't you just like call action subscribe when this whole thing gets instantiated or whatever?
oh well, this is when it's instantiated. So like in a React class, you'd have like component did mount, and Hyper took a simpler route, and they just added these as handlers, and I could put these anywhere I want. So I could put them on this input, for instance, and as soon as the input is created or destroyed, it would call on these two. So this is just like what I would consider to be a clever thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess like maybe the part I'm thinking of, and maybe this isn't so important. The way I'm looking at it is that kind of feels like the render part of a React component, where it's like, hey, here's all the JSX, and then up above is an actual class, and then like the row mount and the long mount, those are like methods in the class versus like being.
Yeah, so HyperApp is intentionally less about classes and life cycles and more about the actual like markup.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, that's the main difference. Which there's some pluses and minuses. I kind of like it because there's less things. Like when you look at a React class, it's got like I don't know 10 or 15 different things on it.
I don't hate it. I remember from your HyperApp tutorial actually I kind of like something with the actions.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. And again, it basically forces the data through exactly one path. And the less paths your data takes, then the less likely there's going to be bugs, and the easier it is to fix a bug. Yeah, cool. So that should be double quotes because that's an attribute. Yeah, so we got that, and we can jump over here, and yeah, so everything does work, just not with Firebase. So let's wire some stuff up. So I'll go into this console here. We're going to create a brand new project, and we're going to call it, I don't know, Hyperlist, because that's a real cool sounding name. And we are in Canada. Maybe we'll get some better server performance, but I make no guarantees.
We're
doing it live, man. I don't know what's gonna happen. It could be shit. Cool. So brand new Firebase setup, and I forgot that they changed the UI, but only for some projects. So that's okay. It's not a big deal. Cool. So yeah, when you initially start off and you want to do a web app, there's add Firebase to your web app, which just gives you a little chunk of code. We're not going to use this because we're using NPM and Webpack, so we've already got Firebase. So really all we need is this config, give or take. So we're going to dump that into app.json, and we'll just have to give it a little bit of love. So let's see, I got like, I think it's that. Nope. Yeah, I don't even know my own Vim bindings. Don't judge me.
I judge you just not because of that.
Oh, okay. Well, as long as it's not because of this. Like, this was where I was mainly concerned. Yeah, so, cool. Now, this guy over here is using the app. Obviously, we don't have any data, but we can fix that. But the first thing we're going to do is going to jump into our database. And we're not going to do rules because, what is this? Start in lock mode. So make your database private by denying all reads and writes. Well, that sounds boring. Anyone with your database? Yeah, sure. What's the worst that can happen? Usage rates just spike and getting billed like thousands of dollars. Yeah, so the old-fashioned Firebase database, as far as I'm aware, didn't require any provisioning. Like, you would just click and it would be ready. But I'm guessing because this is in beta and there's a little bit of magic that there's some other stuff we got to do. That's okay. Yeah, we want to allow read and write. That sounds like it's for everybody. And this does sound like a very dev sort of setup. Cool. And obviously we have no data. And this looks considerably different from the other database viewer that we saw because now things are divided into collections. And I think the term of collection is object. So, or I guess document ID. Cool. So let's just play with this for a second. So we're going to want something like that, and this is going to be, oh, we get first class array support. That's pretty cool. I didn't think that was going to happen, but apparently
Not in our life.
cool. So we're just going to like add in a list that's got just one item in it, which is going to be first item. Save that. Cool. So we got a list, and each list is a document, and this is the ID of our document. So this is a lot more of a Mongo-y interface, which I believe Firestore is also based on Mongo, but they did a little bit of magic and sugar, and this has a little less magic and sugar, so you can do cooler things like querying multiple fields, that sort of stuff. Yeah, so this all looks pretty sane, and looks like it's kind of doing the right thing. So let's see if we can get it to populate our app. Once I get to the right window here. Cool. So yeah, let's close that. And I don't know what change we made. Just do that. This guy should be fine. So now we've got a reference to Firebase in our state. And we'll just go into our index, and we're passing Firebase along, so that's cool. And index. So we've got this, which is totally not the right thing. So let's see, I'm going to cheat a little here and be like, hey, how do I access my data? All right. So we're going to have to get our Firebase instance as a reference here. So this is going to be, actually no, that won't be state, that'll be Firebase, and we're going to have to know about that in both places, I think. who needs brackets? Yeah, so we got like Firebase, and it sort of looks like we can just do Firestore. Let's see. Now we have access to this guy. So we'll just shortcut our lives a little bit. I don't know that we'll need to yet, but we'll see. And yeah, so we want to just get everything that we have. So how do we do that? Looks like we can maybe do something like db.collection, and we know we have collection list, and we want to do a .get. So I think we'll have something that looks remotely like this. By the way, this could just like completely not do the right thing. Yeah, so looks like we get snapshots again. So snapshots are just references to data that we've queried, and we can get the data from that reference. Yeah, so looks like we get a set of documents. So we could do snapshot dot for each. Actually, you know what? Let's do for each. And we got document. And then we could probably do something like actions.setLists. And yeah, so this totally isn't going to work for multiple yet. But, you know, we'll figure that out. Cool, so like maybe this is going to do the right thing. So let's go to our lists, and doesn't do anything, but it seems to think that Firestore isn't a function. Dun 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 dun. Yeah, let me just click a few things and on my other screen, because he wants to see boring documentation in 420p. Cool, so read data from there, so that looks pretty sane. Oh, it looks like we maybe need a different version of Firebase. Let's see what we got here. So we got Firebase 4.9, so that should definitely be there. But it looks like maybe we also need to do I don't need all this chat. Potentially import Firebase Firestore, which apparently augments our Firebase object. Yay! Oh my god! There's a thing.
That qualifies as a thing.
Yeah, we're in the future now. Okay, so obviously when we click this, it's going to do something completely incorrect, which will be just loading up my prefabricated list when we know that there's only one item in it. So let's fix that a little. Also, let's fix this. So we need, oh no, it is Firebase first. Firebase.firestore. And let's clean that up because we don't actually need to reference the DB. And again, we know this is broken, but we're going to come back to it shortly. So in our actual list, we also need to take in params, and we're definitely going to need Firebase now. This guy's probably going to need access to Firebase too. Cool, so over here, we're just going to add in params for Firebase. And Firebase comes in as a prop. Neato. And we're going to have to do that down here too. so obviously the set timeout is not at all the right thing, but we do know that maybe something like Firebase.Firestore .collection list .doc params ID, which would be that guy there, .get .then. And I'm just taking some wild guesses based on the other Firebase stuff, so like this could be just like completely not doing the right thing. But yeah, so we get a snapshot, and we know we want to populate items, so we'll do actions.set items snapshot dot I don't know what that's going to be, but we can find out using the power of the internet. Okay, so JavaScript, Firebase, Firestore, and we get a query snapshot, and this is gonna like do some stuff. Yeah, so we can get what does for each give us? Enumerates all the documents. Well, we only have one document. So what if we did docs, which is an array? Yeah, so we only have one document. So I think we can do docs dot maybe value dot items. I don't know. I don't think that's gonna work. But while that's going on, let's see. We also have a document snapshot, which might be more so the thing that I want. Dot data. Oh yeah. Okay. So this is actually a document snapshot because we are getting a document, and that means that we can do something like document snapshot dot data dot items, and this might actually do the right thing. Cannot read map of undefined. You're undefined. Oh my god, who is this guy? Cool, let's see what we get. Cool, so we got like some stuff, and we definitely don't get a dot data the way I was told. Cool. Yeah, so let's use some science on this. So we have a collection reference.
Circulate back.
Yeah, so this gives us a collection reference. And then we have a method to get a document, which gives us a document reference. And that's this. And do I have to do a magical query for this?
Is that the right ID?
Yeah, it should be. So this is just passed in blindly from the URL. So that's this guy here, which did look pretty similar to, oh, actually, it might not be. Okay, so, yeah, I had a bit of a hack. We probably don't need that. But, yeah, I was looking for a dash dot whatever, but in reality, we can just get rid of that. And that'll be good. And we get a list ID, yeah, from this guy, it gets passed back from this, just a param. Cool, okay, so maybe this is going to do a little bit more of the right thing. Yeah, so like, not at all. And so let's see, so it's, we're doing state ID, so that's probably incorrect here. This should be params ID, so we can just verify that we get the right thing in now. Cool, so our ID looks correct. We get a document snapshot, which apparently we have access to data directly from here. So let's, I don't know, let's see what data gives us. Pardon my really awkward wrapping there. Come on, big money, no whammies. Undefined. Okay, so a bit of a whammy. I know, who is this guy? Why is he in control of anything? What does get give us? Yeah, like okay. I'm okay with that. Okay, so we definitely still need a get. And a get gives us a document snapshot in a .then, so this is back to where we mostly were. And the snapshot from the document, hey, that's where data's hanging out on. Yeah, cool. So this should be a actions.set. Yes. No. Oh, yeah, set items. I'm just looking at the wrong thing. So snapshot.data.items. Come on, big money, no whammies. Oh, why is there a map? What's going on in this? So maybe we'll just do a console.log set items, and we're just going to see what items are actually being passed through. It's very possible that data is something slightly more frustrating. Sorry guys, I'm totally failing you. Yeah. So document data is just an object with our data. So that seems like it should be giving us the right thing, and yet we get undefined. Okay, so if we do that console, so it's spelled way better. Snapshot.data. This should definitely give us the things that we put in there. But apparently data is a function, so it would totally make sense that .items wouldn't exist. Let's try this again. Cool. It's the future, man. Oh yeah. Hey, so there's our first item. So that took us almost half an hour, so I'm sorry. But again, never used this before, so we're just basing everything off of my own intuition and a little bit of luck. So, yeah. Cool. So we've got like our add new items, and this seems like maybe it needs to maybe be aware of Firebase a little. So let's do that.
You got it. The other way is to actually, you can't just pass get empty. You pass get with a field.
What field? What does
Like
that do
items,
for us?
I guess it would have been.
Oh, so if I only want to query the items in there, I could just do that. Okay, interesting. We'll get there. We'll get this working in the worst possible state, and then we'll make it a little better, all within 5 minutes. It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
We got 6. Oh, you're dead.
Yeah. It's like totally not a big deal then. Cool. So we got this, and yeah. We could do it all. Cool. So now when we add a new item, we're also passing in Firebase, which I added to the completely wrong spot earlier, and no one caught it. You're all watching, just waiting for the fail.
You just like paste in the middle of variable names and shit.
Yeah, man, I just play by my own rules.
I'm gonna dangle an M.
Yeah. There we go. Now we're pairing, man. We're pairing. Sounds like we probably want to do something like this. So we got like our collection of lists and our document, which is going to look something like our ID. And we probably need some sort of way to update a field in our document. So we have a document reference. I'm sure there's something similar to update. And maybe we could do something like state dot items dot cat new item. Maybe we can give it a shot. I'm making no guarantees at all. Meanwhile, I am looking things up. Hey, we got an update function which takes a variable number of arguments. Let's pretend this is gonna work. And just for the sake of making sure there's no magic, we're just gonna clear out our new item. So this isn't gonna auto update. We're gonna have to refresh, but this should still send stuff. Let's see, big money. All right, so now we refresh. Oh my God.
Nice.
The future's now. So obviously we have a problem, being that this guy does not at all care about live data, and we do, because that's what a good person does. So let's see. So we got like our document reference, and we have a .get, but I would really hope that we could do a .on. Is that possible?
I'm looking.
Yeah. Oh, we have an on snapshot.
Yeah.
Attaches a listener for document snapshot events, and we could can we use that though? Is this like actually the right thing? You can pass individual on next or on error callbacks or an observer. Yeah, so the documentation for this is less good, but let's see. So instead of get, let's try a .on snapshot, and I think we can just pass a function, which this might be like another snapshot. In fact, the very same snapshot that we want there. So like, maybe? And there's only one way to find out. Oh my God. It's live, baby. And yeah, other people, if you're hitting this address, except with my IP address, which I tossed in the announcements channel, you could do it too. Yeah, so that works, which means that we can also maybe go back to our lists and do something very, very similar. So let's go here and maybe get an on snapshot, and maybe this works mostly the same. Yeah, almost certainly it's not going to, because references or collections are different than documents. So I'm just gonna peek in here very quickly. So we get on snapshots, so that works the same, and it sends back a collection snap. No. What do I get from you? So a query snapshot, which gives us a collection of. Yeah, so basically what I want is a way to map over the documents, which, oh, yeah, we can totally do that. So we got like this for each loop, which isn't going to do what we want, but we do have, I believe, snapshot.docs, and each of those has an ID associated with it, which is all we really need. I don't know if that's actually going to do exactly what we want, but we can see what we actually get from it. I suspect it would be mostly not the right stuff. Oh, docs isn't a function. Is it just plain old docs? Okay, and we get a query document snapshot, which has a single item, which is our individual thing. Cool. So we could do a let's see. So we set a list. So we get our list of documents, and maybe we could do something like list is going to be snapshot.docs.map docsnap. Oh snap! And this guy is going to be just our lists. And really all we care about is passing back an ID. And this is going to be like docsnap docs. So this will be a document snapshot, which should have some sort of like .key or .id, which it does, has a .id. Oh yeah, we started that. Okay, so we'll go back here. Yeah, that's good. So yeah, all we need is a way to create a brand new document, which can we do it in a minute or two, maybe? Maybe we'll see. Once I find my mouse. Cool, so yeah, we're just going to do this, see if it works, and if it did, then we'll call it a tech talk, and it truly was a Shawshank Redemption. Alright, so we got a new list, and this guy probably cares about Firebase, and it's going to be something like firebase.firestore.collection list, and I suspect we're going to have something like a .push or a .add. Let's see, we're on a collection reference, and that gives us, hey, we got a .add. That's neato, and we can pass it some data. So we could do maybe a .add. And we know we've got a blank list of items. And yeah, so what's this? So we got our Firebase, our state, and we don't need to return a new state. All this does is call Firebase and does some magic for us. So that seems like maybe the right thing. So let's try go with a button. Everyone loves buttons. And on click is gonna probably look like that, and we're gonna do maybe actions.list, and we're gonna have to pass in Firebase. Cool. So yeah, let's see. Did it work? Got a new list. Oh shit.
Did it work? You bad.
That was supposed to be baby, and it just turned into Bab. And I can see shit is already getting a little scary. Yeah, so...
People being assholes?
Well, you know, it wasn't too bad. I think there's like 4 people on YouTube Live, so it could be mostly the London office just seeing if it works.
That's huge.
Yeah, so chatting with lists. That's how it's done.
List chat. So you have.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like that's basically what this is, though, right? Like basically create like a room, and
Is it a room or a list? I don't know.
no one does.
I don't know.
If you're gonna release a new chat app, make sure you try to take over an existing package name on npm. I hear that's the hip thing to do.
Oh yeah, totally.
What's that?
What was it? What's the chat app that they like grabbed a directory name on npm that somebody else was using? It was a couple of years ago, and the guy got pissed off and just dropped all of his packages, which like killed half the web.
Oh, right.
We got like a few sad faces going on here.
I'm leaving.
But yeah. So we did it, and surprisingly, with absolutely no knowledge of Firestore beforehand, we created something that can save live lists.
Everyone use it.
Sorry, what's Firestore?
So other things that maybe we would want to deal with in the future, but definitely not for now,
36 or something.
is this generates some sort of a
Fire
reference that we'd want to clean up on unsubscribe.
Right.
And same here. So I don't know how you do that yet, but there's a way.
Cool.
Cool. We did it. That's all I got. Thanks for jumping in, guys, and thanks for showing up, London.